Let's talk about Mamdani. What a mess. Oh, so he, not only did he get inaugurated, sworn in, and said the nonsense about we're going to enjoy the warmth of collectivism instead of the frigidity of individual rugged behavior or rugged individualism. Now, it turns out he's got a director of the Office to Protect Tenants. And New York is all about the landlord-tenant situation. I mean, the high-rise buildings are filled with people leasing their apartments. Rich people, poor people, middle-class people. It's the dominant thing in New York. And he has an office to protect tenants, which sounds good because as between a tenant and a landlord, most people think of themselves as the renter and you think, yeah, protect the tenants. Unfortunately, he's hired a lunatic. Yeah. Her name is Sia Weaver. And I'll get the name of the wonderful woman online who tracked Sia Weaver's accounts before she started deleting them all. And this woman did a great job. Michelle Tandler is her name, who pulled the screenshots of some of her most egregious posts. Like, okay, I'm just going to read a couple. There's no such thing as a good gentrifier, meaning people who move into like poorer neighborhoods and have a little bit more affluence and are responsible for raising the property values and bringing nicer businesses in. Only people who are actively working on projects to dismantle white supremacy and capitalism, and those who aren't. Here's another one. Rent control and public housing for everyone. Massive government interventions to solve gentrification. Here's another one. She writes, I agree with you unless you're talking about rent control. Rent control is a perfect solution to everything. She goes on to write, I think pass really strong rent control is a more effective way to shrink the value of real estate than reducing rezoning applications. So what she wants is to shrink the value of real estate, and she thinks the best way to do it is to pass really strong rent control. Then we get to the racial stuff. This country built wealth for white people through genocide, slavery, stolen land, and labor. White supremacy built the North and the South. Then she goes on to say, endorse a no more white men in office platform. And then she adds, and no more reality TV stores for that matter. Obvious reference to Trump in 2017. And then she writes, impoverish the white middle class. Home ownership is racist. Failed public policy. Impoverish the white middle class is the stated goal of our new tenant czar in New York, Rich, which tells me it's just as bad, if not worse, than we expected. Your thoughts on Sia, the new tenant czar?
Yeah, it's comically bad. Now, the ultimate problem's not her, it's Mamdani. And these are Mamdani's views as well, although he's a good politician, so he did as much as he possibly could to obscure them prior to the election. But private property is not just a core individual right. It undergirds every liberty in Western civilization, and rent control, wherever it's been tried, has been an abject failure, including in New York. You know, the famous phrase, ladies and gentlemen, the Bronx is burning, which is supposedly said during a World Series, broadcast in New York in 1977. It wasn't actually said, but there was a huge fire visible from the stadium, and so notable that the broadcasters talked about it because all these buildings were burning because they were dilapidated, or the owners didn't want them anymore because they weren't making any money off of them, and they couldn't possibly make money off of them. So they didn't invest in them and didn't have any incentive to keep them up. So what you do when you rent control a bunch of apartments, you ensure that their stock, their value goes steadily down. And then meanwhile, everyone else who's not in a rent controlled apartment has to pay even more because you've constricted the supply. So it's just been an abject failure everywhere. So on top of just these hideous, immoral views she has, she knows nothing about economics and nothing about the history of her own city.
Here's a little more on camera this time from Sia Weaver in SOT 9.
Democratically controlled public housing is really important. And that's why when Raquel is talking about the communities and that she's describing, that that's a created community where the people who are living there are like setting the agenda. And so, people like home ownership because they like control, and that's been perverted by like deep racism and deep classism in our society. So like we have to not have a racist and classist society. And so that's like something we need to think about like deeply. But you know, to me, it's about control. And why rent control is really important is because rent control alters the power dynamic between renters and who owns the building.
We have to think deeply about the deep racism and classism behind homeownership, Rich. That's our assignment from Sia Weaver.
You know what she reminds me of? This is what people say is being done to South African farmers, right? You get a government that is racist against white people and seeks to oppress them in order to supposedly make up for past injustices. Homeownership.
Wait, can I just say, sorry to interrupt you, but literally in his acceptance speech, Mamdani said South Africa is our model.
There you go. Yeah, I missed that. But homeownership is a universal aspiration, and it's good for everyone. And you want more people to be homeowners, not to punish people who happen to have enough resources to own homes, and to really reduce the value of housing and to make rents lower and the price of houses lower. You need a greater supply. So you need to encourage developers and landlords to build and invest more. And this is the exact opposite approach.
So not only does she think that housing is racist, she actually thinks that white New Yorkers are going to have a different relationship with property. Sia doesn't think you should really have your apartment under the terms that you and your mortgage broker or the seller negotiated. Here she is in the clip that made a lot of people unhappy when it hit yesterday, Sod 8.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Yeah. What does that mean?
What does that even mean?
A different relationship to property. What does that mean? Your property is being taken from you, or you can no longer own it? And I don't know anyone, whether they own like the smallest little postage stamp property or the biggest mansion in the country. Everyone is proud of their property. Everyone's highly invested in it. No one wants anyone to take a step on it without their permission. This is a fundamental part of human nature, and that's why systems based on this worldview always and inevitably fail.
So Harmeet Dillon, who's running the civil division at the Department of Justice, she saw that and tweeted out, hey, reminder, hey, FYI, we're watching you, and it's illegal to discriminate on the basis of race in housing policy. Sorry, but you're going to get sued if you try this shit. Thank God for Harmeet.
Absolutely.
She's truly like one of the MVPs of the Trump administration. And she does it quietly without fanfare, but she's a badass. A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to someone from Birch Gold Group? They use an educational approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until January 30th, if you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, you just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to $10,000. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate up to $10,000 when you buy before January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898. Claim your eligibility today. Again, text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.